Hi there! In the previous episode, I showcased the possible implementation of the sitemap generation for your Hanami applications. If you're new to the channel, make sure you check that out, as today I'll make a direct improvement on the topic. My sitemap generation works great, however, it's not production ready yet, because generating a sitemap can take a while for bigger collections. It doesn't matter if you want to send an email, upload a file, or perform some expensive calculations. I'm always trying to minimize the time my server is blocked by a single request. In this particular case, I don't want to block my server until the sitemap generation is finished. If I would, my blog authors would be frustrated by waiting for too long after publishing a post. To achieve this, I could make use of multiple threads or by using reactors, or I could leverage one of the background jobs libraries. Today, I will show you how to make use of a background jobs approach by using a Sidekiq gem and configuring it to work with Hanami projects. Then, I'm going to schedule my background job to run every day and refresh my sitemap by updating it with new content from my website without me even thinking about it. So, let's go! Sidekiq. If you work with Ruby, I guess I don't need to introduce a Sidekiq gem to you. It's a background processing engine for Ruby. It's used almost everywhere. For a long time, Ruby lacked a robust built-in solution to execute code in parallel, so solutions like Sidekiq were one of the first things you've added to the applications. With the introduction of reactors, things may slowly diverge over time, but I don't expect any big shifts in the near future, as people are just comfortable with using background jobs processors at this point. Sidekiq has built-in Rails integration, but making it work with any Ruby project is pretty straightforward, and this is what I will show you today using Hanami as an example. First, let me add Sidekiq to the gem file and install it. With this, I can configure the gem to work with my project. Sidekiq configuration is pretty straightforward in Hanami, as well as in any Ruby project. I'll need a worker, Ruby file loading code required for my worker to work. However, before I add them, let me briefly explain how the Sidekiq works. Nothing detailed, just to give you a rough idea. Same as with a lot of other stuff, it's not necessary to know it in order to use it. But I used Sidekiq for years without really understanding how it works under the hood, and at some point I got this question on a recruitment call just to feel a bit dumb. Hope you'll be able to avoid this in the future. So here's the thing. I simplified the whole thing extremely, but I can recommend a great article about this topic written by Paweł Dąbrowski. He digs deeply into the Sidekiq's implementation and what is happening in each step. Totally recommend that one. Sidekiq is basically a separate Ruby application that communicates with Redis database, where it schedules jobs to do later and picking it up in separate thread. Usually the setup works like this. You have your application running in a single thread. From this thread, you're running the perform_async method on the worker class, which transforms the Sidekiq definition and the arguments passed to the method to a hash. Then, this hash is added to the chosen queue in the Redis store. In a separate thread, container, or whatever a Sidekiq job manager is running, picking up everything that is added to the queue, instantiating the instance from the hash version, and performing the job synchronously. You may have multiple Sidekiq containers picking up the jobs from the queue, because each of them will pick only one job at a time from Redis, and that operation is thread safe. What you can learn from this diagram though is that Sidekiq Manager doesn't really need to know about your application code, but only about workers and the code required by those workers to be run. This is important as in Hanami we really can leverage this thing for our advantage. Now let me add my worker. In the previous episode, I've written a generate_sitemap service. Now I'm going to create a new file in the app/workers directory with the same name. My worker will inject that service as a dependency. Then, within the perform method, I just call my service right away. Looks simple, doesn't it? And indeed it is. Now we need a Sidekiq configuration file to be added. I create a new file in the config directory named sidekiq.rb and boot my Hanami application inside. Because I placed my worker within the app directory, I can just boot my Hanami application and all my workers will be loaded without me doing anything. As a bonus, all dependencies will be resolved automatically. With this, I can run my Sidekiq process by pointing to my sidekiq.rb file and checking in the console if everything works well. This will do nothing because I don't have any jobs scheduled in the Redis yet. To fix it, I'll call my worker manually for now, directly from the Hanami console. When I'll just use perform_async method, my service will be called as soon as possible. I can also schedule the job to a defined time in the future using perform_in method. This time, you'll see a sitemap generation running only after a short delay. Awesome! It seems that Sidekiq is properly configured already. This way, you could trigger the sitemap generation asynchronously from the Hanami action or the interactor. However, let's do it even better. What we already did is great, but I don't want to always trigger sitemap generation manually. Instead, I'd love to have a background job that is automatically triggered every day. This way, I won't need to worry about updating my sitemap or pinning search engines after a successful sitemap refreshing. For that, I'll use the sidekiq-scheduler gem. It's quite simple but an extremely useful library giving our Sidekiq some steroids. Let me add it very quickly to my project. This gem allows me to define sidekiq.yml file inside the config directory, where I can have all my recurring jobs defined. I'm going to schedule my generate_sitemap worker now. I need to define the identifier of my scheduled position, then specify how often the job should run. Just for this showcase, I'll set it to run every 2 seconds. If you are not familiar yet with this scheduling syntax, I recommend you bookmark the crontab Guru. It's an interactive editor of the crontab syntax, which I visit all the time because cron syntax is one of these things that I am just unable to remember. Having that, I can just change my Sidekiq configuration file to require the Sidekiq scheduler, and I'm ready to go. Now, when I run the Sidekiq process again and wait a few seconds, you'll see the sitemap generation logs being shown on the console every 2 seconds. Now I can set the schedule to run at midnight every night, and we are ready to go. Sidekiq scheduling is amazingly simple to set up, as you had seen in this example. However, by putting the workers into the app directory, we reflected the Redis setup where Sidekiq by default needs to load our whole application. If we want to be more explicit, we could keep our workers within the lib folder and only load whatever is necessary for them to run. However, I like to leverage the slices to group my workers logically to the part of the application they belong. Let me know in the comments if you would like to place your workers in different places and why. Unfortunately, that's all I have prepared for this episode. I hope you found it useful, and if you do, consider supporting this project. If you like this video, hit a thumbs up, and if you want to see more content in this fashion, subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notification bell. You can also subscribe to the newsletter and follow me on Twitter. I want to especially thank my recent sponsors: Akila Simane, Bill Tien, and Benjamin Klotz. By helping me with a few dollars per month creating this content, you're helping the open source developers and maintainers to create amazing software for you. And remember, if you want to support my work even without money involved, the best you can do is to like, share, and comment on my episodes and discussion threads. Help me add value to the open source community. If you know other great gems you wish me to talk about, or have an amazing idea for upcoming episodes, please open a discussion using the GitHub discussion threads you can find at the bottom of any published article. As usual, here you can find 2 of my previous videos. Thank you all for supporting my channel, you are awesome, and have a nice rest of your day.